Hello there, and hi Deb, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Katie.
And yeah, it's lovely to have you here. And if you can hear my children in the background, it's because they're just heading out the door. So I hope they're not too noisy. But yeah, I'm really excited to have Deb with us here today because we're talking about a topic that's really close to my heart. And as I was explaining in the introduction to this discussion, inner child work is hands down the most powerful technique that I have experienced myself on my journey through, healing and moving towards wholeness. And Deb is an expert in this area, and I can say that from personal experience because she and I have been working together over the last several months, and she's been guiding me through a very powerful technique that she has to go back and heal the inner child. And Deb herself, we've known each other since 2013 now. Deb and I did the Feminine Power course together with Claire Zammit, which was a big turning point for me, and I think for you too, Deb.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and you'll let me know if that gets too loud in the background. Is that okay?
Yeah, we're talking about the inner child, so they're making sure.
My little children, their little children are not so happy this morning. But so Deb is an artist herself. She is a voice coach among other creative talents, and she supports artists through the Awakened Artist community in aligning their soulful gifts and allowing them to express those in the world in a way that makes a positive difference. So she's on a mission to harness the power of love and art to heal and recreate our world. And I just love that mission statement. So thank you, Deb, for being here with us. And perhaps you can explain a little bit to us about what the kind of work is that you do with artists and how this is such a central part of what you do.
Sure, I'd love to. So I created a way of coaching artists, performing artists, creative artists. I do private coaching. I have like an online course that also incorporates the work in a community. And really the purpose of everything that we do is to help artists reconnect with their wholeness, with their sense of wholeness, with their inner creative power, the source of their inner power, which a lot of that is in our inner child, which I'll explain that in a little bit, and our purpose. I really believe that all art is ultimately an expression of connection, love, and it helps us to feel our feelings. When we're sad, when we're happy, when we're any kind of emotion in the realm of emotions, we connect with that through art, through music, through film. So dance, paintings, books. So I see feelings as guidance in our lives. So when we're feeling out of sorts, it's because we know we're off purpose. We know we're not connected to our inner self, to our spiritual self. They say we're all spiritual beings, we're human in a physical body, in a physical experience. So we're really more of a spiritual presence than we are a physical presence. So when we're out of alignment with that core of who we are, that spiritual essence, we don't feel good. And we believe that the things that we don't like about ourselves are true, then we don't feel good. Because our inner being doesn't feel that way about us. Our inner being is made of love and compassion. So when we're feeling ways that we don't want to feel, instead of trying to react to those unwanted feelings, if we can begin to practice stepping back and realizing that it's like the GPS system in the car, and getting out of alignment with compassion for ourselves, feeling our true selves, our true desires, feeling that we're deserving of our desires, that we matter, that we're allowed to want what we want, that it's okay to be upset when it's hard and it's not working. You know, when we get out of alignment and we're making ourselves wrong for being upset, or we feel like a failure and we believe that that's the truth, any of these things, that's like taking a wrong turn, and the GPS system is saying, you're off track, make a turn. So, but what happens is when we go through our lives and we have a trauma as a young child, or we inherit conditioning, energy patterns from ancestors, or the collective conditioning once we start school and we're on that school bus and, you know, we're around authority figures outside of our own home, you just get conditioned. And in the moments where something happens that doesn't feel good, somebody could say something, or a natural disaster, or anything, you know, someone gets sick, anything could happen, and it doesn't feel good. In order to survive that moment, we go into that fight, flight, or freeze. And natural animals in the wild, when they're, say, being attacked, their adrenaline kicks in, their hormones kick in, and then fight, flight, or freeze is important sometimes, you know, if you're chased or attacked. And so you either have to fight, or you flee, or you play dead, right? You shut down. And once the threat is over, animals in the wild or nature calms down, realizes that the threat is gone, and their hormones return to normal, and they recover. And they're okay. But human beings don't always do that. And we believe that the threat is still there because we haven't recovered from it. And so we can get stuck. We can get stuck in that peak experience of the stress, of the threat. And over time, whether it's conditioning or a crisis or repeated crisis, if somebody lives in an abusive home, or there's a lot of fighting, or they've experienced a lot of death at a young age, the energy patterns start to settle in, and we kind of get stuck in these ways of viewing ourselves, viewing life, viewing others, and we start to form beliefs around that, conditioning our mind to believe that these things are true about ourselves. And then we live as if that's true. And it's not that we have these thoughts or feelings, it's that we believe they're true. So we're never trying to get rid of thoughts or feelings. We just want to see that they're not who we really are. They're things that
yeah, so it's almost like when we experience a negative event, it's I remember you saying it's like energetically in that moment, because we didn't know how to cope, it's like a part of us is frozen in time with these, you know, with these beliefs about ourselves of, oh my God, I'm worthless, or I'm useless, or I'm unlovable. And then that gets frozen in our energy pattern. It's like a blockage where the energy can't flow freely anymore. And then the way that, sorry, you go.
Yeah, and also what happens is in that moment, and this is the key part, and this is in the work that I do, in that moment where we go into fight, flight, or freeze in order to survive the perceived threat, in order to survive, we have to cut off our ability to feel things, certain things. So, you know, we usually don't feel safe anymore in that moment. So we detach from our ability to feel safe when XYZ happens, or when somebody's getting too close, or blah, blah, you know, everybody's story is different. And so we give up. We might say, I can't trust my own judgment. I can't trust the situation. So we cut ourselves off. It's like we amputate. I always use this. Yeah. And I like the analogy of we put a tourniquet around our hearts, and then we stop the flow of feeling, you know, feeling the flow of our love, of our compassion for ourselves, because we're stuck in these other fragmented states of being.
And the more and more
So,
that happens, the more tourniquets you get around your heart, the less you can feel that flow of love, and it becomes like layers covering up our true essence. Yeah.
right.
Which is really interesting. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just that when you and I have worked together, I know that I remember you explained that to me, that it's like in that moment. And the reason I wanted to say that why you and I started working together is because exactly as you said, our feelings are guidance. And I was having some really heavy, recurring, repetitive, dark emotions. And I reached out to you for help, and you've been guiding me through a process to help me process those. And interestingly, when you said that in that moment when the negative, you helped me trace it back to an original event. And in that moment, like you say, you split off from yourself, because in that moment you don't know how to cope. So you shut off as a way to survive. And what you have been helping me do is reconnect to the feelings in that moment, because I was so disconnected that I couldn't describe what those feelings were. And so your process helped me, which I found intriguing, because I thought that I was someone who was quite in tune and connected to my feelings. But that was evidence to me that there are these events where in order to survive, we completely shut down and we cannot connect to it anymore, because out of survival, we have forcefully stopped ourselves from feeling those feelings. So you had to help me even describe what those feelings were, and and to name them, because I couldn't do that by myself. I needed someone external. I needed you to help me name those feelings, because you could intuitively see what they were. And that was real evidence to me that, wow, we all have these bits that we've split off, and to be able to heal them, you need to actually reconnect with the feelings that you felt in that moment. And that's hard, and that's why we can't do it by ourselves, because we are disconnected from that moment.
I mean, I think we can, once we get practiced at doing that. I was really clumsy in the beginning years ago, but I've practiced it a lot. But what happens is that it gets so painful to feel those feelings.
Yeah.
And then what happens is we kind of shove it under the carpet, or it becomes in our blind spot. Like when you're driving your car and you have that side mirror, if you try to change lanes and you don't look in your side mirror and turn your head and check your blind spot, there could be a truck in your blind spot, and if you change lanes, you're going to get creamed. And that's kind of how life is. If we're making a life decision, or we're just going about our lives, and there's something in our blind spot that we're not
aware of,
paying attention or turning our head to look at. Why do I keep getting upset every time she says XYZ to me? Well, that's a clear sign that there's something going on, because we shouldn't be getting upset every time so-and-so says such and such.
I love that. It's like your emotions are the image in the rear vision mirror saying, hey, there's something you need to look at there.
Yeah. When we look to see what that is, then we start to say, oh, when she says that to somebody else, they don't get upset. It's clearly a trigger in me. So then we go through life, and when something else happens later on in life that reminds us even a little bit of that originating event, or if we grew up in a house with alcoholics, or a house that was always angry and fighting, anytime we're around that energy, it just re-triggers us, and it puts us on high alert. And it's like our radar's always on, and we're always alert, and we can't relax. We're always like going towards our amygdala, the fight, flight, or freeze response. And so I liken it to having like a wound on your arm, and it keeps almost healing, and the scab's starting to form, and then somebody walks by, rough callus, and knocks off your scab, and now it's an open wound again. It hurts. It's raw, just because somebody said something callous, So, and then you think that person caused you that pain, but they really didn't. It was like you were saying, don't shoot the messenger. But I mean, they activated the pain, but the pain was already to start with. And while it seems like such a traumatic thing for us to keep having these recurring traumas, incidents happening in our lives, it's actually the inner child that we'll get into in a second, calling for our attention to go back, to have our adult self come, or our current self come and pay attention to that wound and give it another chance right now to actually get the attention and the healing and the soothing that it needed, that it never got, the validation, the witnessing. It needs to, these things that happen to us when we're so little, you know, from the time we're born or even in the womb, and then we're toddlers, you know. I mean, the stuff that happened to me that caused some of my biggest traumas, nobody in my life even remembers. Yet to me, they were like major traumas. But they were just a day in the life of, you know, little Deb. And so we have to go back now and reparent and witness. And really it's just about reconnecting those fragmented parts so we can feel it, taking the tourniquet off the heart and letting the blood flow again. Getting unstuck so that we can start. And ultimately the goal, like, why would we even go through, you know, doing this? Because it hurts sometimes to re-experience the original event. It, you know, when you're doing a healing session, it's only temporary. It's only a few minutes that you're really feeling that pain, but some people will go their whole lives to avoid it. But until you let yourself re-experience it, you can't heal and transcend it. You can't theoretically. And this is why, as adults, we know it's so stupid every time we react to this or we get upset because of that. As adults, we know in theory. But the inner child, the younger version of ourselves that experienced the originating trauma, is still stuck in the trauma. So I like the example, it's like as soon as that feeling gets activated in us again, in our current self, it's like the younger self, the 4-year-old, the 2-year-old, the 10-year-old takes over. And it's like saying, oh my God, I'm going to, you know, and then it's like they start making the decisions for us, and they start reacting instead of creating how we're going to handle it. They react. And that'd be like giving your 4-year-old, you have a 4-year-old, an almost 4-year-old.
And my youngest is like, almost 4. Be like giving him, letting him take charge.
It'd be like giving him the car keys and saying, here, you drive the car. They can't even see through the window. So, and then we wonder why we crash our lives.
And what I find fascinating about that, a lot of people don't want to visit the inner child stuff, or, you know, that there's this sort of stereotypical image of lying on the chair in a psychotherapist's lounge and talking about your past and your childhood. And a lot of people say, I don't want to go there. But because a lot of people think that's in the past, so I don't need to deal with it. But energetically, the past is part of your energy field, and it's in your present moment now, affecting how you respond and react to situations. So it's not in the past. It happened in the past, but you carry that frozen energetic, or that imprint in your energy field, and you're constantly going to be getting. This is something that I had the big realization about 2 or 3 years ago. I was constantly getting people and events and situations of this recurring pattern, and that's why I think I reached out to you and several other people. Why is this happening to me over and over? And it's because my inner child was seeking resolution and wholeness for all those things that happened to me. And the only way it can do that is to trigger events in our external reality that force us to go back and look at the original wound.
And this time, maybe we'll see it with an awakened consciousness, which is why I call my work the awakened artist. We're not just creating art in a creative state, like, oh, let's create. No, it's an awakened, taking responsibility for the way we feel, and then causing the possibility for others to connect with their feelings as a result. And then once people can reconnect with their feelings, take the tourniquet off their own hearts, they can start to have compassion for themselves. And
their art is more powerful because that comes through the message of the art.
Art is universal. We when you're sad, you get in your car and you roll up the windows and you crank up the radio and you sing and you feel better. Even though you're singing a sad song, you feel better because you've allowed yourself to reconnect with the feelings that you've been stuffing down. Mm-hmm. And this is a lot of the cause of addiction. When when it's too painful for people to feel the wounds of their past or the confusion or unresolved issues of their past, they'll just try to numb it by getting busy or distracted on social media or drink or drugs or overeat or, all kinds of things, because they cannot bear the pain
of the original
re-experience. And if they, and so re-experiencing, and this is why therapy doesn't necessarily work for everybody, because sometimes re-experiencing it isn't enough. You have to actually claim back those parts that you sent away, that you cut off. You actually have to reintegrate them back.
So that brings us to the power of your technique, because you are not only helping people. Sorry, that door keeps. Oh, Jack.
I know.
You okay, Sue?
I thought you had to go.
Poor Jack's at home. They're about to go to the zoo. But so you not only take people back to re-experience that original event, which is so painful, but you lead us through a process that allows us to not leave us hanging in that pain and terrible overwhelm, but to heal that. And that's what I love in working with you when you go through this process, because what you're helping us do is learn to reparent, as you've mentioned. Yeah. Maybe you can talk us through what it is that you do that allows for that healing when you call for the...
Yeah, I would love to. So when people do a session with me, I usually do them by video like this or by phone. My people are not local, so I don't do it in person. But the first thing we do is I take them through a guided meditation to create a safe place in their mind, a very specific safe place where they have maybe their guides or angels or a safe being that they feel is it like a guardian.
And you allow the person to create that space, right? So that they are creating something that feels safe to them, whatever that looks like.
They create what's specific to them.
Through visualization,
Right. I guide them, but I don't ask them, what are you seeing? That's private.
Yeah.
Their own safe place. And this is a place that they can go back to anytime. So once we create a safe place, then and I like them to keep their eyes closed so they can really focus inward. I ask them what the situation is that they want to work on. What's the feeling that's going on, or the situation. So they'll describe what's happening, just the who, the what, the where, what it is, how it feels in their body to experience this. And then I ask them to name the feelings. So maybe they're feeling anxious, scared, worried, alone, overwhelmed,
humiliated,
humiliated, all these things, hurt. So then, there's other things that happen, but this is the basic stuff. And then I'll have...
And that is a key part that you helped me to do, is name the feelings I was feeling. That's something that we can't often do if we're that disconnected from the original event.
Right, because it's in your blind spot. It's in your blind spot. So then I ask people to allow the first memory that they have to surface to their awareness. I don't want them to go digging or working hard. Just let it come up. A lot of times people don't remember, but they'll have a sense of something. And so I have a very, I'm very empathic and intuitive, and I help people get through those blocks in their memory. So that's one of my gifts, my specialties with this. But I help them, let something come up where they felt this way. Now, it could be completely different situation where they'll think, oh, this, like, I can't tell you how many people say, oh, this is stupid. It doesn't even make sense to me. And I'll say, well, what is it? And they'll say it, and I'll get them to keep speaking about it. And then we'll start, naming what happened, who was there, how did you feel? And they'll start to feel those feelings again. And they go into that child's self. So then I have the adult self come to the child in the room with the child's permission. The younger version of them, we'll just use you for example. So little Katie and adult Katie will be together, and if it's okay, and then they'll go into a conversation. Is it okay to sit there? And you'll feel it. Like sometimes the little child's like, no, I don't feel safe around anybody. You have to stay over there. Sometimes they're in a very scary situation, so you'll take them to another location altogether. You know, we just go with what we need to go with for the child to feel safe. Okay? And then the child will tell you what happened and who's there, how they're feeling. And the adult will say, well, what do you need? What can I do? Or just comfort them. Sometimes they'll go sit on their lap and hold them. They just want to be held. It could be any number of responses. And they start to move through witnessing this child's trauma, what they're feeling, what happened, validating them, seeing them, hearing them, saying, yes, I'm so sorry, I'm here for you. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I didn't know, now I'm here. Then sometimes we actually have to advocate for the child. Maybe somebody's being abusive, so we'll have to go tell that person who's being abusive, whether it's a sibling or a parent or an authority figure or an older child, that they have to go away, and maybe their soul guides will take them somewhere to go get healed. And that so many times helps the inner child to feel better, to know that, because they feel guilty, you know, it's like, I don't want them to feel bad, and I don't want to leave them in the lurch. But if they go and get help for themselves, then the child feels better. And this is the big part that's really important, is with the help of the adult self, they'll call back those fragmented parts. And I really try to help people name what the parts are. For example, do you remember what some of your parts were that you had said?
Yeah, mine were things like, I am lovable, I am worthy, I am safe, I am loved, things like that. Yeah, that I had the complete opposite in that moment when you took me back to the original event, which, as you said, I didn't believe was a significant event. But when you helped me tap back into that moment in time, the tears just started, flowing, and it was like this volcano of emotion that came erupting out. And that was when you've hit that point, because that event, no matter how insignificant it seemed to everybody else at the time, it traumatizes you.
Yeah.
And you helped me reconnect to the feelings in that moment, which I couldn't name. And then, when you helped me call back the parts of me that were split off in that moment, which was about, you are lovable, you are worthy, you are whole, you are loved, all of those parts that in that moment I believe the complete opposite of. Yeah, that
right.
was...
And when you don't believe that you are those things, then you feel like you have to work hard to earn them. And so your whole life you've had to work hard to earn, and then you wonder if it can be just stripped away from you at any moment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
everything seems conditional, and because you've split off from those parts of you that know the truth of who you are. Yeah, so you're constantly seeking ways to prove to yourself that you are those things, but it can never be real because it's not based on a true belief in your... What I find interesting is that your reality reflects back to you how you are feeling and believing at your core, and until you can shift those beliefs.
You shift them right in this moment where we call back those parts of ourselves.
That's where the healing happens.
The child becomes whole again. And so now the child has a choice to integrate back into the adult self. And now the adult self, like when we're going through something now that's stressful, that's really stressful, especially as adults having our own children, and, things are falling apart sometimes. And the adult in us is saying, hold it all together, keep it together, just get through, right? But the younger self before, when it was fragmented, it was saying, oh, no, 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 you're going to break down any second. This isn't safe. Get away, right? But now that the child is whole and can say, okay, I'll hang on, right? I know I'm safe with you. Somehow we'll get through this. Like the wild animal that's being chased down. Somehow I know I'll get through this. Then when the threat is over, then you can go and nurture yourself as the adult and that child, do the things that your inner child loves, a bubble bath or a nap or a walk in nature or just hugging your dog or cat.
And that's the beautiful part, because that is, I know to some people it might seem, like you're just making it up. Like when you go back into that original moment and you give it an alternative solution. So in that moment you were traumatized and there was no one to comfort you. But what you're doing is helping us go back in that moment and through visualization, sit with our younger child as our adult self and give them the comforting they needed in that moment. So give them a huge cuddle and hold them, and you ask them, what does your child need? And for me, it was just, it needed a big hug, and I just held it. And, you ask all the questions about what does the child need in that moment. So what we're trying to do is recreate an energetic imprint, which is what would have happened if we hadn't split off from ourselves. So if we got the attention we needed, if we got the nurturing and the love and the compassion that we needed in that moment, that then our energy would have continued to flow freely and we wouldn't have got frozen and split off. And so it's not something that's fictional. At an energetic level, you are actually going in and unblocking that energetic blockage in your field. And
reconnecting. It's sort of like you pulled, you want to use the hairdryer, but it's not plugged in. So the hairdryer there's no power. And so we get cut off from our power in life. And so once we reconnect to those parts that we had cut off, now we have our power back. So this is why it's so important for artists to create, because when we have our power back, now we can create really deep, potent, powerful art. I mean, you see the difference between this fluffy art, this fluffy, and then movies, music, books that really go deep. And you're like... Wow.
Walking through an art gallery and one particular piece can just move you to think about your own life.
And that's the stuff that's undeniable, and that's why art heals us, because there's so much art out in the world, and something somewhere is going to speak to you and cause you to go in and feel again. And that's what we're trying to do, is to create art as a frequency, as a vibration in the world that fills up the world everywhere we look and listen, with things that make us feel better. So we can reconnect it and to know that it's safe to feel again. And the last step that we do in the inner child thing is to take that energy from the past and to send it back to the source, so that, because energy cannot be created or destroyed, so the inner child needs to know that it's gone and it's in a good, safe place now. So we send it back to the light, back to the source, out into the universe somehow.
I love that. I remember with mine, I was standing on a big balcony and I wrapped that painful moment up in a balloon and just watched it disappear into the sky. And at some stage it popped and went, and whatever the image is that comes up for the person, but having that event that allows that original painful energy to be transmuted into a different form.
Transmuted, exactly. And so you went through the experience, you felt it, you got your needs met, you reconnected with the parts of yourself that you had to cut off. You feel whole, comforted, seen, and now you can let it all, you literally can let that energy go out of your field. And then you integrate back into your adult self.
And interestingly, what happened, what I noticed after doing a session is that the feeling, the really strong emotions that were usually triggered by a person or an event are no longer as charged. So say you have a difficult relationship with someone, and again, I think we didn't mention it explicitly in the beginning, but we talk about not shooting the messenger, in the sense that whoever is causing you pain or discomfort right now is probably not. It's not about them. It's about this original wound that you experienced, and this person is simply triggering that for you.
Not to say that they don't have issues that are a perfect fit to trigger you.
Yes, yeah. But rather than laying the blame on that person, which we tend to do, we just tend to say, God, they're annoying, or why do they behave like that? Or it's really taking it back to ourselves and saying, gosh, they are triggering something big in me. What is that?
Yeah.
And I need to explore that. And then once you go through this process of healing and calling back those parts of you that were split off originally, then when you interact with that person again, I've just found that it's less charged somehow. It's some, you know, the edge has been taken off. It's not so difficult, or it's not, you know,
right.
And it doesn't necessarily happen all at once, but in layers. But the good thing is that you can notice that it's releasing its grip on you. You know, that this work is.
And I think why that happens is because this has been in our blind spot. So we never could see what was actually going on. So we pull back the veil and we realize that it was myself that misperceived what was going on. And I was just left without anyone to help me understand. And then I beat myself up for that, or I made myself wrong, or I just cut myself off. And so we start to have compassion for ourselves. And when we have compassion for ourselves, and we actually have compassion for the other person, not to say, oh, I want you back in my life necessarily, but to say, you have problems, and I understand because I have problems, and you have to work on you. I have to work on me, and I'm not going to take your issues personally, but it might not be healthy for me to be around you, but I know now how to take care of myself. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Instead of blaming you, I release you from blame.
Right, which in itself at an energetic level shifts the relationship, because that person can sense that they're no longer being judged or blamed, and that shift can sometimes, just create an opening that makes things lighter.
Because we all know when people have a bad vibe about us. You don't even have to talk to anybody or see them. You know when somebody's sending you bad vibes. We're all very sensitive on some level.
Exactly. So when that person no longer senses that judgy negative vibe, then they might start relaxing. And like you say, it may not be that you're going to have a good relationship with that person, but you're no longer going to get triggered repeatedly by that same pattern all the time. That's what I've noticed, that events or situations that used to trigger me, and I could stew on them for days, or, and just a small comment, and I would get really, and I would mull over it in my mind. Now I can just see, that's the remnants of that pattern, and it's okay. You can create distance between yourself and your emotions, and you can sort of sit back and observe, wow, that feeling's coming again. Gosh, it's still there, and because I don't think we fully get rid of it, but the difference is that we don't get engaged, and that we don't get sucked, drawn into it, and then we don't react from that place. But we're more able to step back and just take some deep breaths and realize, okay, that pattern's coming back. I can see it, it's okay. And then being able to reparent ourselves. Like what I was going to say is the beauty of your technique, it's something that you can use yourself on an ongoing basis. So it doesn't just happen in the session with you, but what you do with me in your session, I can then, when I feel triggered, go and lie down and just go in and ask my inner child, what do you need? How do you feel? And learning that technique in itself is, and I think that's what you were saying in the beginning, this is something down the track you can learn to do yourself.
Absolutely.
Once you know the technique. I
think that it's part of something that's becoming really popular right now called energy psychology. And I can't tell you how many of my clients have told me that 5 or 6 sessions with me has helped them more than years of therapy, because this is holistic. It's body, mind, and spirit. And therapy, is more linear, and it's not necessarily addressing the energy, the causation of the energy break. So it's everybody's doing inner child work now. Everybody.
Interesting, because when I mention the term, I get a lot of skeptical looks. Those people that think it is lying on a psychiatrist's couch and talking about when Deb is mean to you, but it's not about that necessarily. It's about learning to understand your own energy patterns. It's about learning to be able to soothe yourself when you get triggered, because all of us in those moments when we feel the emotion rising, what we need is self-love and compassion and soothing. That's right. We need someone to wrap us up in loving arms and say, it's okay, and you're perfect just as you are, and all the things that we need to hear. And it's learning to do that for ourselves. And interestingly, one of the books I've had in my cupboard for a long time is this Inner Bonding.
Oh, wow.
It's probably backwards. It's called Inner Bonding. Becoming a loving adult to your inner child, a breakthrough
Wow.
5-step process to transform how you relate to family, friends, and co-workers.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
Everybody.
Everybody's doing it. Yeah, and I think it still is one of the most popular techniques used in, psychiatry and psychotherapy and all of that. But
Yeah.
like you say, people don't often get the results because they're not necessarily getting that whole completion cycle that you do with the healing of calling back the fragmented parts.
Yeah, that's key.
And that's where personally I felt the huge shift is where you feel those parts coming back and you hear those positive thoughts about yourself. And it's like, wow, I'm whole again. That's where you can feel the shift.
And you remember that you were whole. Look, when we're born into this world, you're going to tell me that you're going to look at a brand newborn baby and tell me that there's anything imperfect about that newborn baby? There's nothing. That baby is whole and perfect. It's the conditioning and the experiences, that life that our soul guides us through, so our soul can expand and grow. That's a whole nother conversation. Why does it even happen in the first place? But I believe that our souls keep growing and evolving to higher and higher frequencies and vibrations. And the higher vibrations are the feelings like joy, love, compassion,
peace.
And the lower vibrations are things like fear, anger, rage, depression,
guilt,
shame. Right. And so we're trying to collectively on the earth right now, we're trying to raise the overall collective frequency so we can start to move out of fear and shadow and anger. We're also angry all the time,
and fearful.
And we get triggered. And eventually, even if we could get to neutral, it'd be
massive.
Yeah. Hopeful.
And that's one last point that's maybe interesting to say is that a lot of people also feel like they're selfish for taking this time to do this on themselves, or that it's nice for them, but interestingly, when you do this at a personal level, you are healing the collective. And I know that's a big concept for some people to wrap their minds around, but it is at the energetic level of the earth, like you say. When we do this work on ourselves, it's having a ripple effect outwards, and it's having a positive impact on the people in our environment.
It's like putting an antidote. It's like if somebody's sick and somebody injects them with an antidote for that disease, and then the antidote starts duplicating its cells in the body and eventually spreads through the whole body and eventually helps to recover. So when I heal myself, I'm an antidote for the collective unified field, the collective energy of the people on the planet. My contribution, I'm either contributing love and compassion or fear and anger. I'm either adding positive energy or sucking energy out of the world, like a vampire. So I'm like, my healing is an antidote. Instead of being toxic, putting toxicity into the collective energy field.
Exactly, because when you do this inner child work, you become less prickly, less reactive, less drawn into drama, less drawn into conflict, because all of, when we choose to react to the triggers that we're getting, it's causing untold ripple effects in a negative way. But when we can bring it back to ourselves and do the inner work and it's not that we're trying to avoid conflict, but we're trying to, like you say, avoid unnecessary drama and conflict, where it's about us having to do our inner work and heal ourselves, rather than and letting a situation just diffuse and peter out by itself, rather than engaging and reacting and causing, another negative downward spiral where the other person then gets its.
And you know what, bottom line, it's really just about feeling good in life. Why not feel good in life? I mean, that's just conditioning from all the generations before us that suffered through poverty and war and natural disasters and, oh, shut up, I'll give you something to really cry about. No, we are living in modern times, and the purpose of the times now, we're conscious of our consciousness. We don't have to live like pioneers on the prairie. We can learn how to feel good and help each other feel good instead of being in pain. And when we don't have to react to the triggers, now we can create in the moment. And that's the difference between surviving through life and thriving in life.
Right.
Thriving is when all cylinders are working, you know, and the cells of our body are awake and alive, and mind, body, and spirit. And so we don't need to just survive. We can start to thrive as we heal, as we reconnect to our wholeness. That's there is just cut off.
And thriving means earning good money for the work that you do and experiencing joyful relationships and all the good stuff, you know, as you say, as opposed to just surviving and getting through the day.
And managing stress, not being buried in the stress, because, you know, we're not going to float through life like a Hollywood movie. We're going to have hard days, but thriving means we can meet the challenges. We can get through the adversity of life, knowing that we're worthy of feeling good and doing our best.
Yes. Beautiful. Well, thank you. I think we've covered everything we wanted to talk about.
Can I say what my website is?
Yes, please.
Okay. It's theawakenedartist.net.
Theawakenedartist.net. And I'll put the link to just in case people in the comments of the video as well, so people can click over and have a look at you and your work. And yeah, I can personally attest that Deb's healing work is super powerful, and I agree that, having had lots of therapy myself, that a couple of sessions with Deb are worth, you know, more than 20 therapy sessions.
Well, your work is helping me. You're giving me business coaching, which is really helping me. So I'm from your work. So thank you.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you for your time today. And I hope this conversation's been helpful for people, and that they can find where you are. And you have your private coaching deals on your website that people can click through if they want to contact you and find out more.
I'm in the United States, in New Jersey, on the East Coast. People are wondering.
Yes, which I hope to come and visit very soon. Thank you so much, Deb. Lots of love and hugs, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everybody.